Scotland, the year of our Lord, 1307. A kingdom scarred by war, its soil soaked with the blood of friend and foe alike. The Lion of the North lies wounded, yet not slain. From the shadows emerges a king in exile, a man once broken, now hardened by loss, betrayal, and defeat. His name, Robert the Bruce. For a year he has been hunted like a wolf, his brothers slain, his cause thought lost, but now he returns, not with armies, but with cunning, not with open banners, but with shadows and steel, and soon, on a narrow strip of marshland, exile and the road back. The year before Lowden Hill, Robert the Bruce had known only ruin. Crushed at Methven, betrayed at Irvine, hunted across the Highlands, he was forced to flee to the wild edges of Scotland. His brothers fought and died, his supporters scattered, and the crown he had seized at Scone seemed little more than a fading dream. But exile forged a harder man. From the rocky shores of the Western Isles, Bruce planned his return, a war fought not in grand marches and open fields, but in the shadows, with speed, surprise, and the land itself as his weapon. A risky return to Scotland. In the spring of 1307, the King of Scots set foot on his homeland once more. His force was small, men drawn from the rugged Western Isles, warriors loyal not to gold, but to the man himself. Yet Scotland he returned to was no longer free. English garrisons dotted the land, and many of its nobles now bent the knee to King Edward of England. Bruce knew that one wrong step could end his cause forever, so he struck not in the open, but in the shadows, aiming for bold raids that would ignite hope among his people and fear in the hearts of his enemies. The Turnberry raid. Bruce's first target was Turnberry, his own ancestral lands, now in English hands. A spy was sent ahead to signal if the coast was clear, but in the dead of night a fire blazed from the town. Believing it the signal, Bruce led his men ashore, unaware that an English garrison under the formidable Henry Percy lay nearby. Fortune, however, favored the Scots. Cloaked in darkness, they slipped past detection and fell upon the town, cutting down English soldiers where they found them. Yet Bruce lacked the numbers and siege engines to take the castle itself. Before Percy could rally his men for a counterattack, the Scots melted away into the night, leaving only fear and uncertainty in their wake. The Galloway disaster. While Bruce struck at Turnberry, a second front opened in Galloway. His brothers, Thomas and Alexander, led the attack, a bold gamble meant to spread English forces thin. But Galloway was hostile ground, home to powerful enemies of the Bruce cause. Soon after landing, their force was met by the men of Dungal MacDougall, a fierce ally of the Commons. The fight was swift and brutal. The Bruce brothers were overwhelmed, captured, and dragged to Carlisle. There, alongside two Irish nobles, Reginald Crawford and Malcolm McQuillan, they were executed without mercy. The loss was crushing. Bloodkin gone. Yet Robert had little time to grieve. The Earl of Pembroke was already on the move, and this time Bruce would be ready for him, learning from Methven. The memory of Methven still burned in Bruce's mind. The disastrous battle where Pembroke had shattered his army and sent him into exile. Back then, he had trusted in chivalry, accepted a promise to fight in the morning, and paid the price when the English struck by surprise at night. Now, he would fight on his own terms. No more open ground, no more trusting to honor. If Pembroke wanted him, he would have to chase him into the wild heart of Scotland, a land that could break an army as surely as any blade. Ambush at Glen Trul. In April 1307, word reached Bruce that Pembroke was closing in. Reports placed the king's small band in the rugged glenlands of Galloway. Pembroke, eager to finish what he started at Methven, pressed forward, but the land itself turned against him. Glen Trul was a narrow, twisting defile, hemmed in by steep slopes and treacherous ground. As the English cavalry advanced in single file, Bruce's men loosed their trap. Rocks and boulders tumbled down from above, followed by a hail of arrows. Chaos erupted among the riders. Seizing the moment, the Scots charged downhill, driving the English into retreat. It was a small battle, but a clear message. Robert the Bruce was no longer the hunted. He was the hunter. The Earl of Pembroke on the hunt. The Earl of Pembroke had tasted humiliation at Glen Trul. For a knight of his standing, and the very man who had once crushed Bruce at Methven, this could not go unanswered. By early May 1307, he began mustering a far greater force, determined to bring the rebel king to heel. News of his advance reached Bruce. The king knew he could not outrun Pembroke forever, so instead of fleeing, he began to choose the place where Scotland's fate and his own redemption would be decided. Preparing the trap at Lowden Hill, Bruce knew he could never match Pembroke's 3,000 men with his own meager 600, but numbers meant little if the battlefield itself betrayed the enemy. South of Lowden Hill lay a narrow strip of solid ground between deep, sucking marshes, the only route the English cavalry could take. Bruce ordered trenches cut across the approach, forcing the enemy into an even tighter formation. Then, just beyond the final trench, his men dug hidden pits lined with sharpened stakes. To the English, it would look like open ground until it was too late. On the morning of May 10th, 1307, the English banners appeared on the horizon. Pembroke's heavy cavalry advanced down the narrow causeway, their lances glinting in the pale light. At first, all seemed in their favor, until the ground itself turned against them. The lead horses stumbled into the concealed pits, throwing riders into a brutal tangle of hooves and armor. Those behind had no room to maneuver and crashed into the chaos ahead. In that moment of confusion, Bruce's schiltrons surged forward, their long spears punching through man and beast alike. Panic and rout. What began as a charge soon turned into a massacre, hemmed in by trenches, bogs, and their own fallen comrades. The English cavalry could neither retreat nor regroup. Panic rippled through the ranks as horses reared and men fell under the relentless push of Scottish spears. Pembroke, realizing the field was lost, gave the order to retreat. But with the narrow causeway clogged, the withdrawal became a desperate scramble. By the day's end, the once proud English force was scattered, fleeing in all directions, and Robert the Bruce stood victorious. Redemption of a king. For Robert the Bruce, Lowden Hill was more than just a victory. It was vindication. Less than a year earlier, he had been a fugitive, hunted across the Highlands, his crown hanging by a thread. Now, he had defeated the same man who once drove him into exile. The victory sent a clear message. The King of Scots had returned, and he was no longer the desperate outlaw of Methven. With cunning, patience, and a keen eye for the land, Bruce had turned Scotland's rough terrain into his most loyal ally, and the tide of the war began to turn. Legacy of Lowden Hill. Lowden Hill became a turning point in the wars of Scottish independence. It proved that strategy, not sheer numbers, could decide the fate of kingdoms. Bruce's mastery of terrain and his refusal to fight on the enemy's terms became a blueprint for future victories. In the years to come, this same mindset would carry him through to Bannockburn, where Scotland's independence would be secured. But it was here, at a muddy pass beneath the shadow of Lowden Hill, that Robert the Bruce reclaimed not just a battlefield, but his destiny as the King of Scots.